Heat wavers over a dusty ramp at a deployed airfield in the Middle East. Late in the 2000s, where engines drone and tools clatter. Crew chiefs jog between carts. Weapons, troops, hustle. And everyone treats the next launch like just another close air support run. The pace pushes edges as small shortcuts creep in, from quick walkarounds to rushed radio checks. Grit hangs in the air, and the runway looks endless under a pale sky in late afternoon desert light. Captain Erin Blake, United States Air Force, a 10C Thunderbolt II pilot, moves with quiet purpose that others misread as hesitation. Peers have tagged her as too slow and too by the book. A pilot who will never be the first to push. In truth, she builds a clean fight. Running fence in. Verifying IFF. Setting master arm to arm only at the right point. And confirming countermeasure programs for flare bursts against likely MANPADS. She checks SAS. Trims the jet. Aligns TGP and waypoints. And marks an initial point that respects deconfliction. Her kneeboard holds a memory the others do not carry. A canyon near miss taught her to read the small signs that warn long before alarms. Like a thin thermal shimmer. A sudden rotor on the lee side of a ridge. Or a dust devil bending the light. She watches for odd glare on metal. Off-rhythm small arms. And faint breaks in the wind that can swing a final heading at the worst second. The lesson was simple and hard won. Trust patterns and let the checklist anchor the mind. Around her, the experts look past the quiet pilot and search for a louder answer. She sets a hard line she will not cross. No showboating. No breaking rules of engagement. Hold positive identification. And keep deconfliction and comms clean, even when the valley shouts. The schedule culture wants speed at any cost, and warns her not to slow the timeline when hands are already on throttles and eyes are already down the route. Erin carries a different conviction. That disciplined preparation turns noise into signal, and that discipline, not bravado, is what brings people home. Warm air shimmers over the ramp as Captain Erin Blake walks the A-10C with steady hands and a clear routine. She traces the nose and verifies pitot and static ports free of dust and tape. Her eyes pause at the GAU-8 access panel as she confirms the safety pin cleared and rounds loaded to spec. She moves along the pylons, inspecting lugs and lines, checking a clean GBU-12 on one station and an AGM-65 hung tight on another. In the cockpit, she settles into a practiced flow that needs no bravado. Fence in runs clean, as she confirms IFF, checks the RWR page alive, and keeps master arm on safe until the right point. SAS and trim get a mindful tap. Then she brings up MFCD pages to establish a clear sensor point of interest and waypoint chain across the valley. On the CDU, she sets planned final attack headings that respect deconfliction and a clean egress lane. Outside the glass, she reads the day like a map. NOTAMs note a corridor flagged for small arms and possible MANPADS near a village. And the wind along the ridge tells its own story. She spots thin thermal lift and a faint rotor on the lee side that could shove a nose-low pass at the wrong second. She writes a neat cue on the kneeboard for a short flare, burst before commit, and another during egress. Her voice checks the JTAC net once, clear and brief. Then she returns to breathing, slow and steady. The plan includes an off-dry if positive identification is anything less than perfect. Because restraint protects friendlies and civilians. Around her, peers wave off these steps as quirks. A careful style that looks like delay in a hurry-up culture. The camera stays with the still hands on HOTUS and the quiet eyes on the tape, where real competence shows without noise. She does not rush the arming call or the taxi roll. She notes fuel state, checks oxygen flow, and watches engine temps. Every switch has a reason. Every pause has a purpose. It is quiet mastery that only becomes loud when needed out there. Heat ripples over the ramp as Captain Erin Blake takes the on-call slot and waits for tasking that never seems to arrive. Leadership weighs risk and holds aircraft back from a valley flagged for small arms and possible MANPADS. Other crews are lined up for a go-fast plan that everyone hopes will not be needed. Erin keeps her headset on and her voice steady, while the engines around her rise and fall like a slow tide. The call comes to hold in a safe stack and not press. She climbs, levels, and settles into a patient orbit that keeps distance from the threat while maintaining rapid access. Her scan moves from instruments to horizon in a smooth loop that never rushes. Fuel, altitude, and spacing stay inside the box while she keeps the net clear of clutter. From the first turn, she reads the ground like a living chart. Dust plumes step off the ridgeline and reveal a steady crosswind that grows with the heat. Thin thermal lift climbs in sheets, and a faint rotor curls on the lee side where the valley bends. She marks how those patterns could push a low-level run wide just when a final heading must hold. On the kneeboard, she adds a clean set of cues. Flare program before push to counter a likely shoulder shot. Egress west low to hide behind terrain until clear of the beaten zone. Request Type 2 control from the JTAC with call sign Anvil 31. And confirm positive identification. No fire areas. And final attack headings before any clearance. Comms begin to fray as the convoy noses toward the kill zone and the terrain swallows the weaker radios. The JTAC voice rides in and out, clipped by the walls of the valley. But the message is still clear enough to plan from. Erin keeps her tone calm and professional and adds off dry to her plan if the picture is not clean. She stays ready without asking for attention. Steady in the stack. Eyes on the wind. And mind on the people below who will need precision more than speed. The convoy drops into a tight valley, and the plan starts to fray at the first bend. Fire snaps from angles that were not on the map. Dust boiling, where trucks try to hug the rock. Radio calls clip and fade as the terrain eats the signal and the ground controller works to hold the net together. The hollow thump of small arms rolls up the walls and the sense of time begins to compress. Leadership hesitates to push aircraft into a corridor marked red for recent small arms and a possible shoulder-fired threat near a village. Other pilots orbit high and wide, waiting for clarity that never quite arrives. Deconfliction is fuzzy, and the stack stretches until it is more show than support. Casualties tick upward, and the gap between need and action grows. Captain Erin Blake cuts through the noise without any show. She volunteers to launch. Not with bravado, but with a clean copy of the task and a plan to meet it. The engines rise, and the jet lifts into hot air while her voice stays even. She keeps the net clear. Short words. Correct sequence. And no wasted breath. Her check-in with the ground controller follows proper close air support flow that anyone in the community would recognize. She confirms the key lines needed to build a safe picture. Acknowledges danger, close. And reads back a restricted final attack heading that protects friendlies and keeps fragments away from homes. Master Arm stays on safe until the right point, and she reports systems clean with SAS steady. Trim, set, and countermeasures configured for a flare program tailored to a canyon with a likely shoulder-fired threat. The setup is measured and calm, never sliding into a recital. She pushes toward the initial point, and the wind shifts exactly as she predicted when she studied the ridge earlier. The airframe shudders in lee side rotor, and the headset hums while she keeps the radio steady and builds positive identification through the targeting pod. Friendlies are marked. No fire areas are respected. And the target picture begins to resolve through heat and dust. She does not rush a trigger or a word. By the time she crosses the last ridge, the last safe option has closed for the convoy below. The map is no longer a comfort, and the only way out is through. What remains is disciplined action, correct headings, honest comms, and a grip that will not shake. The valley is loud, but the path forward is precise and narrow. Low in the valley, Captain Erin Blake rides the folds of terrain until rock hides metal and the convoy sits under her wingtip. She calls IP inbound with a steady cadence. Requests continue until positive identification is confirmed, and moves master arm to arm only when the clock and geometry say it is time. The targeting pod builds a clean picture while she verifies friendlies by the cool wink of an IR strobe and checks no fire areas against the map on her knee. A restricted final attack heading holds in her mind like a rail she will not step off. She programs a short flare burst just before commit and another for egress because a shoulder-fired shot loves a hot valley. Small arms snap past in bright lines, and the airframe gives a brief shudder in rotor wind as she presses the scan. A right hydraulic caution flickers. She sweeps the instruments, reads pressures steady, and decides to stay out of manual reversion. The muted click of HOTAS and the soft hum in her headset keep time, while altitude and airspeed sit where she wants them. Friendlies shift closer to the target at the last second. So she calls off dry and lets the pass go cold. Danger close is acknowledged through the ground controller, and she resets the run without hurry, building the picture again from the pod to the kneeboard. Terrain masking buys another approach. The restricted heading is restated, and wind drift is trimmed out until the pipper and the plan agree. She will re-attack only when positive identification is solid and the safe lanes for fragments and people are more than a hope. Every choice bends toward protecting the convoy and keeping civilians out of the blast and ricochet that a rushed shot would invite. Her words on the net are short and useful. Nothing extra. Nothing missing. And each one keeps the team inside a common frame. Switches move only when they matter, and each motion ties to a reason someone on the ground can live with. In the noise of the kill zone, her discipline becomes the thin line that holds chaos back. And the audience can hear how training turns fear into careful, repeatable action. The valley tightens until, following the safe pattern, guarantees the convoy will be swallowed. Captain Erin Blake feels a brief wind shift, brush the left wing, and senses dust peel off the ridge in a clean lane. The air tastes dry inside the mask, and the rotor burble settles for a heartbeat, breaking the line of sight from a likely shoulder-fired position. She knows this narrow window will not last, and that caution, properly aimed, is the only courage that matters now. She keys the net with calm precision and requests Type 2 control from the ground controller with call sign Anvil 31. Danger close is acknowledged, and she builds a simple, disciplined plan that protects friendlies first. The moving technical near the culvert is the right target for a guided solution. So, she selects a GBU-12 and sets the aircraft to make the weapon do the careful work. Final attack heading is confirmed within the restricted arc, and the abort code is stated without drama, so everyone shares the same picture. Master arm goes to arm at the correct point. Never early. Never late. And her cadence stays, even as she sets the laser code and checks positive identification through the targeting pod. She watches the IR strobe on friendly positions and rechecks no fire areas. Then breathes once and times a short flare burst before commit. The airframe hums in the rotor pocket and steadies as the pipper and the plan line up. Her hands stay light on HOTAS, and her mind stays inside the geometry that keeps families in the village safe. She eases in with the nose just below the rim and holds the heading that protects fragments from drifting toward the roadblock of friendlies. The window begins to slip as the wind returns to its old pattern and the dust tries to creep back across the lane. She releases, and the weapon rides a steady beam while she guards the egress timing for the next flare burst. In her head, the thought is simple and quiet. The valley will not choose the moment. She will. Track is solid. Effects will land where they should. And she is already shaping the turn to the west to keep clear of the beaten zone. The headset carries the clipped pressure of the net, but her breathing stays even and slow. The picture under the pod starts to resolve into safety instead of panic. In a few seconds, the window will be gone. and the convoy will still be there because precision arrived in time. The GBU-12 rides the laser like it was drawn on rails. Steady and unhurried, Captain Erin Blake holds the confirmed final attack, heading that keeps fragments drifting away from friendlies and the edge of a nearby neighborhood. The targeting pod picture stays clean as the weapon tracks through heat and dust toward the moving technical. She breathes once and prepares the egress turn while the impact blooms exactly where it should. Effects register and the valley shifts. She rolls level for a short guns pass measured in heartbeats. 1 to 2 seconds at most. The CCIP pipper rests where the geometry says it belongs. Then the GAU-8 speaks in a tight burst that lands short and then on. Just enough to break the enemy's grip without inviting ricochet toward the convoy. She is already on the planned egress lane. A flare burst stepping off the rail to blunt any shoulder-fired shot. Her cadence feels effortless because the work lives in her hands. HOTAS clicks are small and exact as she updates the sensor point of interest and slews the pod to scan the next threat lane. She pushes the new SPI over the data link so the ground controller sees the same picture that she does. The radio carries a calm acknowledgement of good effects. Not loud, just certain. Erin answers in the same clear rhythm with a concise battle damage assessment. One technical is neutralized by the laser-guided bomb, and another is suppressed by guns. She adds a clean status line. Winchester 1, GBU-12, while guns remain green. With fuel and playtime to continue overhead. She keeps master arm on arm only when the run demands it, and safe when it does not. If a lightly armored vehicle remains and the pod confirms a solid identification with deconfliction squared away, she selects a single AGM-65 and employs it with the correct brevity and timing. If the picture is not perfect, she returns to controlled suppression with the GAU-8, choosing short bursts that shape the fight without risking civilian harm. Each pass begins with a review of no-fire areas and danger-close restrictions, and ends with egress time to miss the beaten zone, her wind study predicted earlier. The rhythm is precise, like walking known steps in a dark room. Back in the operations room, people who once doubted her watch the HUD and pod footage in a silence that feels like respect. They see steadiness that never drifts into hesitation and choices that land where they should. The convoy begins to move again under cover. Trucks clearing the bend while the valley finally exhales. Erin holds overhead with calm authority, ready to re-attack only if needed. And the lesson settles in, that mastery can be quiet and that precision is its own kind of power. The valley settles into a tense rhythm as Captain Erin Blake shifts from precise execution to measured leadership. She keeps the chain of command intact by passing recommendations through the JTAC with callsign Anvil 31. Her voice is steady in the headset, calm and exact, never stepping into orders for the ground element. The soft click of HOTAS marks each update as the fight edges toward control. She proposes an altitude block to clean up the stack and reduce risk of a mid-air. The restricted final attack heading is restated, so every run protects friendlies and the nearby village. No fire areas are reconfirmed against the latest picture on her screens. She shares an updated sensor point of interest over the data link, so the ground team sees what she sees. Erin suggests holding the convoy short of the bridge while she scans the eastern ridge for secondaries. The targeting pod drifts across the slope and pauses on likely positions that match the earlier wind study. She adjusts the planned egress lane to miss the beaten zone that forms under the crosswind. Fuel, spacing, and timing stay inside safe margins while the plan gains clarity. Other pilots and the operations room begin to match her cadence. They wait for her succinct calls that the JTAC relays. Continue when the picture is right. Off dry when it is not. Cleared hot only when the criteria are met. Master arm is on arm only when required and safe when it is not. Every recommendation is framed by positive identification and collateral damage considerations that keep civilians out of danger. The net grows quieter as the team aligns behind her method. The convoy engines idle at the hold point while Overwatch tightens, and the ridge yields no fresh threats. Erin keeps the tempo even, confirms the next heading, and marks the egress once more against the wind. Status has shifted in a way everyone can feel, not from swagger, but from competence measured in results and lives protected. From overhead, Captain Erin Blake watches a second enemy element slide toward the tail of the convoy near a blind curve. She keys the net and requests Type 2 control from JTAC with callsign Anvil 31. She restates the restricted final attack heading and confirms no fire areas near the village along the wadi. Danger close is acknowledged, and she brings the picture into one frame for all. She chooses a low-level cover that keeps metal in the shadows and eyes off her approach. Terrain masking carries the jet along the ridge until the valley throat opens just enough. Master arm goes to arm only when the timing and geometry meet. She calls in hot and sets a short flare program to step off before commit, building space against a likely shoulder-fired shot. And she rides the contour with a light touch. At the merge, she rolls wings level and lets the CCIP pippers settle for a 1 to 2 second burst. The GAU-8 speaks in a tight ripple that smacks the ambush to cover without throwing metal toward the convoy. She eases off safe west and turns into the planned egress lane that avoids the beaten zone her wind study predicted. A second flare burst kicks free as the jet slides behind rock. The radar warning receiver chatters and small arms thump against the valley and pops. A right hydraulic caution blinks once, and she runs a quick scan. Pressures steady. Controls responsive. She decides to stay out of manual reversion and holds 200 to 250 knots for margin. Instruments, horizon, and pods stay in cadence, while she keeps the net clear and the picture simple. And calm breath keeps hands honest. She coordinates with Anvil 31 for continue and abort options, while maintaining identification and deconfliction. The convoy takes the cue, pushes through the turn, and tightens spacing just enough to escape the kill zone. Erin holds overhead cover and watches for secondaries along the eastern ridge, where dust shows movement. Each call is short and useful, and each pass honors the restricted heading that keeps the village safe. The last trucks clear the valley, and the ambush fades into distance and heat. Erin fences out, resets master arm to safe, and reports battle damage assessment with a technical neutralized and another suppressed. She confirms no civilian harm observed and sets course west along the low route, breathing even as the rumble in the airframe slows. The urgency drains to steady relief, earned by discipline that never lost the thread. The headset is quiet again, and the sky finally feels wide. The room is dim and cool, and the projector hums like a steady fan. On the wall, TGP and HUD footage rolls in quiet loops while people lean forward in their chairs. Talk-on moments appear with clean transitions, and the picture of friendlies is steady under IR strobes. Deconfliction stays obvious in the symbology, and the timing of flares lines up with wind and terrain. Operations staff speak in low voices while notes slide across the table. The summary is simple and firm with no civilian harm. A convoy saved, and only minor damage to the aircraft's skin. The restricted final attack heading is visible on every pass, and the egress lanes match the wind study drawn on Erin's kneeboard. The room absorbs the pattern and the rhythm rather than the noise. Erin writes with a calm hand while the pen clicks softly against the board. She completes the mission report and the strike report with lessons learned that focus on timeline discipline, terrain masking, and the brief wind window that opened the fight. She adds a line about flare programming and rotor pockets on the lee side that can shake a pass at the wrong second. The paperwork reads like a map anyone can follow when the next call comes. In a pause between clips, the pass sits beside her like a shadow. A canyon near miss once froze her breath and left a mark deeper than any scar. and that fear became a promise to anchor herself to checklists and cadence. Recognition arrives in a measured way through official acknowledgement and a clear path toward a flight lead role that fits her skill. A superior who once doubted her gives a small nod, and the room settles into respectful silence. Erin gathers the tapes and rises with slow, even breath. She knows why the trucks made it home and why the sky felt wide again on the way back. Precision carried the weight when bravado would have cracked. The last frame fades. The projector winds down, and the lesson lingers long after the door closes. The room settles. And now, the story turns toward you with a simple takeaway. Caution is not weakness. And precision saves lives when pressure climbs and seconds shrink. Think about moments in your world when the safe pattern felt slow, yet the careful choice kept people safe and together. When the stakes rise, would you choose speed or precision? And would you hold for positive identification while others try to rush the timeline today? Join the conversation and keep it respectful. Share a time when you were underestimated for following procedure. And tell how staying by the book changed an outcome at work or at home. Tap like if this story spoke to you. Subscribe for more stories about discipline that protects, and add your thoughts in the comments about orders, instinct, and responsibility. Use simple terms from the mission like in, hot, off dry, and cleared hot so fans of aviation feel seen. Here is a friendly nod to accuracy that stays open to everyone. Say magazine for rifles and say rounds for the GAU 8 cannon, and keep the spirit of radio brevity without a wall of jargon. In hot marks a run starting. Off dry means the pass held fire. And cleared hot belongs to the controller in the loop. We close on a calm line that echoes the theme. Silence breaks when discipline says go, and engines wind down as a checklist rests on a knee.